everyone, and welcome back to my channel. My name's Yarn Owl. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make this absolutely adorable little crochet owl who, if we grab the rest with it, we use as our mascots on this channel. So I'm just going to pop them over there. Good enough. For this project you will need yarn, of course. For this project, for making amigurumis, I tend to use size 3 to 3.5, and you have to use the right crochet hook with this. I use a crochet hook size 3. The yarn that I use is 100% acrylic. That's just my preference. I find that it creates a much nicer texture. You can hide your stitches very well with it. That's my personal preference, and I work from the inside of the yarn. You also need felt in 3 different colors. You'll need white for the little white of the eyes, you need black for the pupils, and you need yellow for the beak. We'll cut those pieces of felt up once we finish the crocheting part. For any amigurumi, you will always need a row counter, which we're going to set to 0, like that. And you need a stitch marker because we're working in the round and we don't want to forget where our row starts and ends. We also need yarn needles. I use metal ones, that's just my preference. And lastly, scissors. With all of that set up, we're going to get started. If you don't know the different steps and different stitches that I use, you can check out the video playlist up in that corner. That will show you everything you need, the magic ring, the single crochet, increase, decrease, and binding off. So I'm just going to get straight into it, and I'm going to show you how to do it. The first row of this pattern gives me a magic ring of 6. So we're going to make that first. Again, if you don't know how to do that, go check out the other playlist of crochet basics, and that will teach you how to make a magic ring. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stitches. So the magic ring is complete. And I'm going to set my stitch marker to 1. I'm just going to put that off to the side. This is really important because I like to use a stitch marker, but you can also use a pen and paper and just keep tally of how many rows you've done and which row number you're on. I just find this easier because it's less effort and I don't have to waste paper. And I'm just going to pull that magic ring tight. And now we're going to start on our very first row. So this is the end of our yarn, and we're just going to put that off to the side without losing our stitch. There we go. Pull this a little tight. Now we're going to recount our stitches until we find that first one. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So just go into that first stitch. Make sure you have both loops on your hook. It's going to be a little tricky. There we go. And then we have to put, for me personally, I always put my stitch counter on the last stitch of my previous row. If you put it on the first one of your next one, that's completely up to you. But I'm going to put it on the last one of my last row. So this is that last stitch right here, right there. And I'm just going to plop it right through there. Click it on, and it's like a little paper clip actually. You can use those too. I just buy these at any arts and crafts store. And I always put them on like that instead of like that, just because when I work I tend to kind of push them up, and I've had happen to me that these stitch markers have fallen out and I have lost where my row starts. Let me tell you, that is far from ideal. So plop that stitch marker in there. And then we're going to start on the next row. Now I'm just holding on to here just so that I have the next stitch. Now I'm just going to have a look at the next row. So the second round tells us to increase, and it tells us to repeat 6 times. So an increase, as remember, is simply 2 single crochets in each stitch. So here's the first one, and go into the exact same stitch, which for this first row is always a little tricky, and then increase. And that's the first stitch, and repeat that all the way around. When we reach the end of our row here, as I said, my stitch counter is always in my last row. So I remove that, and then I do that last increase. So here's one, and here's the second, and then I put the stitch counter back in place, just like that. Now for me personally, I like to cut off this tail as soon as I can, simply because it's just in the way, and I just snip it off, and we can throw this away. And now we're starting on row 3. Now I've been forgetting to update this, but this is the start, so it's okay. So put, and we are now on row 3. So row 3 tells me to stitch in the next stitch, and then increase, and then repeat this set 6 times. When reading a crochet pattern, it will also often give the instructions in brackets, how many repetitions after that, and in square brackets it tells you the total amount of stitches in your row. If you're new to making amigurumis, I highly recommend to count the end of your row to make sure you have the correct amount of stitches. I've been counting as I go, and I have 12 stitches, which is the end amount that I needed for round 2. Round 3 is stitch, increase, repeat 6 times. So that is, go into our next stitch right there. So that's stitch, so that's a single crochet, and then increase into our next one right there, and then do 2. So here's 1, same stitch, and the second one. So as we can see, we now have 3 stitches in just those 2. So we need to repeat that stitch or single crochet increase all the way around. We need to repeat that 6 times. So again, into the next stitch, single crochet 1, into the next stitch, increase. Just like that. And I'm going to repeat this 4 more times. And that's round 3 done. So now we move our row counter to round 4. And then we keep going. Round 4 tells me to single crochet in the next 2 stitches, and then increase and repeat this 6 times. So instead of only doing a single crochet into the next stitch, so that's 1 single crochet, this pattern, this round, tells me to do it in the next 2. So here's 1, and here's 2. And then we increase again. Just like that. So now we have 1, 2, and then that increase right there. And so now we just repeat this all the way, pardon me, and now we just repeat this all the way around. And this leaves us with a total of 24 stitches. And that's round 4 done. Now we go on to round 5. The next round tells me to stitch in the next 3 stitches, single crochet in the next 3 stitches, and then increase. Repeat this 30 times, and we have a total number of stitches of 30. So we're going to single crochet in the next 3, so that's 1, 2, 3, and then increase. As you may notice, there's a pattern to these where every single time where we increase a row or where we do a next row, we always have 1 more stitch in those repetitions. And this is to make sure that the start is always nice and flat. So if you look at the circle that I'm working on now, you'll notice that it's a very flat piece. So this is the bottom of the owl right here, and once we stuff it, it'll of course fill a bit more. And so this will eventually form that little bottom part of the owl, but for now it's still really nice and flat. Now round 6 tells us to single crochet in all 30 stitches, so that's exactly what we're going to do. We're just going to single crochet this entire round. That's all it is. Now we can see, after doing round 6, we can see that it's starting to take a little bit of a bowl form. And if you look here, this is actually the front of our stitch, and this is the back. So what we need to do is we make sure we need to open up that work so that as we're working, we have the front of our stitch on the outside of our amigurumi. That makes it a little prettier. Our next row, row 7, tells us to stitch in the next 3 stitches, to single crochet, in the next 3 stitches, and then to decrease. So if you don't know how to decrease, remember, go check out that video, playlist that will tell you everything you need to know of how to make this simple little owl. So, round 7, single crochet 3, so that's 1, 2, 3, and then we decrease. So, 1, second stitch, and pull through all 3. Now we have to repeat this 6 times all the way around, so that's 5 more times for me, and at the end of that we end with 24 stitches. So off we go. When you reach the end of the row, you see that we have to decrease these 2 stitches. I always do half of the decrease, then I remove my stitch marker, and then I finish off that decrease, and then I put the stitch marker back. Just like that. And then we're on to row 8. The next one says that for the rows 8 through to 10, we have to stitch or single crochet in all 24 stitches. So we're going to do row 8, row 9, and row 10. So we're doing 3 rows of only single crochets, and that's going to give a little bit of height to our little birdie. So I'm just going to go off and do that, and I'll see you guys when I'm done. And now we are on row 11. So this is the last row, and this one tells me to single crochet in the next 2 stitches and then to decrease. Repeat this 6 times and you end up with 18 stitches. And you can see that we're already getting a little bowl-like shape. So finish off this row. So that's single crochet 2, 1, 2, and then decrease. Just like that. And repeat this around for 5 more times, and I'll see you at the end. Row number 12. This is the very last row. I might have said that wrong at the start. Row 12 is single crochet in the next stitch, and then decrease. Repeat this 6 times, and you end up with 12 stitches. So, single crochet in the next stitch, so that's 1, and then decrease. Just like that. Repeat that 5 times round. Now this part can get a little bit finicky because your rows aren't really that big anymore, in which case my stupidly long nails get a little in the way. But push it through, and then you'll see you have a lovely little end result. There's the last stitch, And we are done with the crocheting part. So just fasten off and finish it off, which is done by going to the next stitch, and we're going to slip stitch this through. So instead of usually having 2 on our hook and then pulling through both, we're pulling through that 1 stitch and pulling through our other stitch as well. Grab the stitches, grab your scissors. Now leave a nice long tail because we're going to be using this to sew it closed. Snip it off, and then pull that yarn through there and pull tight. We will not need the hook, the stitch counter, or the row counter anymore. Now at the start of this video I forgot to mention that we're also going to need some super glue and some polyfill stuffing. Personally, I like to stuff my amigurumis with polyfill, but if you don't have that, don't worry, you can just use yarn. There's nothing wrong with simply taking some excess yarn, maybe some really cheap yarn that's just $1 or $2 or something, and then cut up as much as you need and just put that in. How strong you stuff your little owl is also completely up to you. I like to always stuff them a little too much and to make them really firm. And that's just my preference. Some people like to stuff them a little softer, some people like to stuff them about a medium strength. Me, I like a good solid little amigurumi because I don't want them to be too delicate. And this little tail end here that we have, I'm just going to grab my hook, put it in there, find my way through, there it is, and just, there we go. Pull that towards the inside. And then I'm just going to stuff it with as much as I can get in there. Sometimes it helps to use the hook, just the back end of it, and just really force it in there. So it's this first little bit that's always a little tricky. And then once you have the start filled in a little bit, I always pull on this to get that last row up and out. So I'm not folding it double or anything. Like that. There we go. That's way too little for me. You can see how squishy that is. I don't like that. So I'm just going to keep going. And it's best to do small amounts at a time instead of doing one large glob of how much you think will fill the little amigurumi. And trust me when I tell you, you can always put more. I mean, if you're stuffing it and you think, it's not good enough, put more. With polyfill, you can always put a lot into a very small space. If any of you are wondering why I have such stupidly long nails, it's because my friend is practicing acrylics, and I'm basically a test client for her. So I'm still getting used to these lengths as well, which is why I'm a little clumsy today. So, pardon me for that. I hope I will get better. Perfect. And then any extra, put that away and save it for next time. The next step is going to be closing our amigurumi. Now there's different ways we can do this. We can either crochet it closed, or what I like to do, I'm just going to stitch it closed with the whip stitch. Now the name of this stitch really doesn't matter, but the point is that we make sure that we do it as neat as possible. If we look at the top, we can see that this stitch here is the end. So I'm going to turn this 90 degrees so that the stitch is on the side. You can also turn it this way, whichever you prefer. I'm going to give this a little squish, and this is going to be the front or back, and this. So these are now the sides because this is right there. So I'm going to thread the yarn through the eye of our needle. There we go. And what we're going to do, I'll put it as close as possible, we're going to try to line up these stitches as much as we can. So this one here is going to be lined up with that one, and these two are going to be lined up. So we're going to go through both of those top two and both of those there. Push your yarn needle through and pull tight. Now the whip stitch means you're going to go over like that. So now we're going to go into the next stitch. Keep pushing your polyfill in there if it's sneaking out. So the next stitch that we need to do is this one. We can see that this is the one we just did. So you need to go into this one. And this is where that crooked tip really comes into play, because we can put it in and then pull it up, and we don't take any of that polyfill with us. Pull that through, and then we're going to go into the associated stitch next to it. So it's going to be this one right there. Make sure you take both, because that's always stronger. You want this to be a very strong fill, strong seam, and pull that tight. You can see here already we're starting to get that little ear of the owl. And then you just keep going like that. So we were just in there. We're now going to go into this next one here. So put it in, bring it up, use that little crooked. And I just like to pull it through just to make sure I can pull it tight, and then I can see this is where I just was, this is where I need to go. Just like that. Make sure you're going through both. And pull that tight. And then we're going to bring this back over. We're going to go into the next stitch, right there. And then the next one, which is right there. As you can see, every single time I pull it tight, I kind of hold it a little because it wants to let go. So I pull it tight a little, and I can double check to make sure this is a nice pretty seam and that my stitches aren't being stretched out too much with that polyfill. So into the next stitch, pardon me, right here. Pardon me. And the last three get a little confusing. You can see that we have 3 left. So we want to do this one right here, so that we end up with 2. Just like that. Now normally that's good enough, but we want to make sure our owl has these 2 adorable tiny little ears right there. And this one turned out a little flatter, but that's just some extra fixing we're going to do. So we go through those last 2 stitches, just eyeball it a little bit. We're going to go through, but instead of pulling this yarn all the way through like we usually do, we're left with this little loop here. And what we're going to do is we're going to knot off this yarn to make sure it doesn't go anywhere. So we're going to go through this big loop that we just made, just like that, and pull that nice and tight. If your ear isn't tall enough, do that again. So I'm just going to do it again just to show you. So you go through, it doesn't matter which side, but we have been going from this side, so let's go from this side, there we go. Pull through, leave that loop, and then go through that loop that you just made. Just like that. And there you go. Now give it a nice little squeeze. Just make the polyfill squish around a little bit. Give it a roll. And there we go. One little owl. But now we need to do the details. Now comes the fun part. So, this has already been knotted off, which means we need to hide this tail. This is my favorite part about amigurumis, is hiding the tail is really easy. You just, somewhere near where that knot is, put your needle in, and just work it through. Push, pull, figure it out, feel where there's gaps in your polyfill, and just kind of force it through. There we go. Look, it's going. And there, it just ends up somewhere. It doesn't really matter where, as long as it's relatively far from your stitch. Just push it through, and pull that all the way through. And then just, we won't be needing that. Now for our owl, so you can see now that our tail end is here, so what we're going to do is I'm going to pull that nice and tight, grab my scissors, just cut that there, good enough, and then we're going to give it a squish, and just watch that little tail whoop, disappear right into the amigurumi. And that's why I like amigurumis, because I don't need to worry about those tail ends, and it's all worked in. And there we have the shape of our little owl. You can see these ears, which tells you where's the front and back, and the little sides. Now I've completely forgot which side was the end, so that's fine. I just like this side because it has a little ugly bit here, which we're gonna hide. This side's pretty. This side we're gonna hide. So, we don't need this. Now, we're gonna do some crafting. We're gonna need those pieces of felt that we had earlier. I'm gonna put this off to the side. We're gonna need those pieces of felt. And I'm just gonna grab a measuring tape just so that I can show you how big I've made mine. And we need to cut out a little pupil, a little eye, and a teeny tiny little beak. If you have a yellow owl, it's a little difficult to see the beak, but it's still there. So I've already cut out 2 of them. I've already cut out the pupil and the eye, which go like that, very pretty. And the pupil here is, what's that? 1/4 of an inch, just about. Which is 3/4 of a centimeter. And then the little white of the eye is just over 1/2 an inch, or just about 1.5 centimeters. So that's if you guys want to make this exactly as big as you want, or as big as this. But for me, it's really just cut it out, test it, and just place it kind of on top, and felt's really nice because it doesn't fall off that easily. So you can kind of place it where you think you like, and that way you can test out the different size. So I'm using these as a guide just because I'm lazy and I want to cheat. But the best thing to do, actually I'll do the white one first because it's easier to see. So use it as a guide once you've cut out one, and just kind of cut the general shape around it. There we go. We don't need that. Go away. I'm just going to turn my scissors around. My scissors have a little bend in them. I don't know why. I actually lost my straight scissors, so I'm using bent scissors. But it's actually quite useful when cutting little circles. And so I'm just following exactly that guide that I made to cut out another little circle. No, come back here. And because it's felt, they kind of stick together, so that's okay. Now I'm not being too precise. I'm still keeping quite a little bit of room because I don't want to accidentally cut into this original one. And now we're having a look. You can see that this corner here is a little sharp. So let's just give that a little trim. There we go. And this side here is a little wonky. So I'm just going to give that a little trim as well. Always make sure you cut it bigger than you think you need, because you can always cut more off than you can add on. Now it's still a little wonky, but I find that wonky gives it character, and they're both a little silly. So those are the whites of the eyes, and now we'll do the blacks of the eyes, or the pupils rather. The blacks of the eyes. Ha! Push it in the corner. It's a little difficult to see because it's black, so I'm repeating the exact same process. Don't need that, goodbye. I'm repeating the exact same process, just with a smaller piece and with black. And if you want to give your owls an eye color, you can always change the color of the white or change the color of the pupil. That's completely up to you. You can use any color yarn you want, any color hook for that matter. I use an orange one just because that's the color it came in. You even can give them different colored beaks. I just like my owls being little rainbows, so I made their bodies different colors, and their eyes and beaks were all the same. I really need to learn how to use these long nails. This is very tricky. Let's try this. It probably won't work, but oh dear. No. Oh gosh. I do apologize for my clumsiness today. I am still getting used to these long nails. I just want to help a friend out. That, and I kind of like them. The claw. I mean, look at this. Okay. It's so cute. Look at his tiny. He's looking at the little star. They're so cute, and they make clicky noise. I love that clicky noise. It's so much fun to play with. They're like little toys on the tips of my finger. I'm just ranting because I'm trying to cut this circle perfectly, so don't mind me. Maybe one day I'll create a story time out of this as I'm working on it. Oh, that'd be fun. What do you guys think? Should I tell stories as I'm making this? Do a voiceover? Make a story out of it? Anyway, getting back to the point. Now the beak. The beak is a little triangle. And this little piece of felt already has one straight edge. So it's as simple as one snip, turn it, make it just about that big, snip, and there, we have a little beak. Easy as that. The beak's the easiest. Straight edges are always easier than circles. Where did my beak go? I lost my beak. Well, oh, there it is. They're so small you can easily lose them, so. And when I made all of these owls at the same time, all of these little boys, or girls, whatever, I'm not one to gender, I actually made one of them. The purple was actually the first one I made, and I cut out the ovals for the pupil and the white, and I didn't glue any of them on. I cut all of them out using the same guide until I had an entire stack of white circles, black circles, and beaks, and then I just glued everything on, because the moment you start gluing, you glue on your fingers, and it's a messy process, and it's just not fun. Well, I mean, it's always fun, but yeah, it's not fun when you have to glue something on and then go back and crochet another one. So I crocheted all the bodies, I made them all, and then I glued everything on. So, I'm just going to roughly place circles where I want. I want them a little closer together. Go. That makes me happy. One of them's actually bigger than the other, I've just realized. Oh well. It'll give it character. We'll have a derpy little owl. Derpo friend. Because we have purple and we have a little lilac friend. So then we open up our... Oh dear, that's not... I need to open it. Hold on. Encountering issues. Got it. And it's already going like crazy. So, put some on there. Lid back on. And then, it smells pretty strong. Put that on. Just like that. This is very messy, but okay. And these edges are a little lifted right now, but we're just going to wait with that for a moment. I'm just going to take the other one. And I have to do this a little further, so let me just bring the camera closer. There we go. So, in order to prevent my own fingers from getting dirty, I can use scissors to hold it down. This is how I should be doing, but it all came out so quickly I couldn't control it. And I just gently give it a squeeze. There we go. And I gently dab a little circle. And then I hold it right in the middle with my scissors. Just like that, if you can see that from the shadow. That, dab a little circle. Plop that back in there. And then I still have a tiny edge between where the glue is and where the felt finishes. So I just want to grab onto the edge and just plop that on. Make sure you place it first and then you can squish it down. Give it a good squish. And it gets a little warm, which is just the glue. It's a little odd. Now I'm going to go in and just fix these. So, little squish and put that down. Sorry, that's not in view. So I'm lifting up this little corner and I'm just squishing that down. Now if you don't like the way that felt looks, you can always crochet a little circle simply by repeating the first, I'd say 2 to 3 rows of this pattern in the color of white, and then you have little whites. Or you can embroider it on, depending on how crazy you want to go and how much time you want to spend on this. Me personally, I find that felt looks fine. It doesn't feel too aggressive, and it's just so much easier and so much more time efficient. So there we go. It's sticking to me a bit. I've already got bits of glue stuck onto me. It's horrible. It gets everywhere. Oh, it's such a horrible feeling. And there we go. So these are there. They're quite firm, but that's just the glue. And then we do the same with these, which I also just realized are two completely different sizes. So I'm just going to fix one of those. Let me just... That's better. Okay, now they're a better size. So you can make them look whichever way you want. You can make them look derpy, which I think I want to go for a derpy look because it's a little bit of a derpy looking owl. But I can also just make it go in the middle like that. You can glue them wherever you want. You can make them look up, you can make them look down, whatever you'd like. And with this one, we're going to do slightly different. Because these are so small, what we're going to do is we're going to grab the glue, just going to put a little circle where we want it to be. And this is in the center of where we want it to be. Take that little circle and just pop it right on there. There we go. Same thing with the other. That's not enough. There we go. Pop that one on there. There we go. Just like that. Now, the reason that I use super glue is just because it dries so, like, these are already dry. It's lovely. They're already, I can't take them off now. Like, I can't take that off. It's down, it's stuck, it's solid. Now the last detail, we have to add our tiny little beak. Like there, right, there we go. So, put that off to the side. Take a tiny bit of glue, and this is going directly onto the crochet bit. Take this, and just, don't go wonky, don't go wonky. Yes, I got it. There we go. Oh gosh, I got glue on my finger. And then make sure you always close your super glue because that's gonna dry out. Throw that away. And there we have it. That is how we make a little owl.